real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are talking about U.S. policing, casualties, and the politics around these topics. For that, I have John Hoyt here. He is the National Second Vice President with the National Fraternal Order of Police, who are previous guests on this show. Always a good time. Give you a little background on John. He joined the Philadelphia Police Department in 1999. He has worked most of his career in patrol as a police officer, sergeant, and lieutenant, working both uniform and plainclothes duties. He's worked primarily in proactive anti-crime assignments, including the Philadelphia Highway Patrol Unit, the city's primary anti-violent crime task force. During that time, he received many commendations, including the department's highest, the Medal of Valor. John has a bachelor's degree in business administration, a master's degree in public safety management, and graduated from the Harvard University Law School Trade Union program. He now holds the rank of captain with the Philadelphia Police Department. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, and I was saying we've had one guest from the FOP on here before, Joe Gamaldi, so he's the kind of the mutual connection here. He recommended that I talk to you. One question I have right off the bat, though, you're the national second vice president. So is that like second to Joe, or are you equal?
Yeah, depends on who you ask. No, but so there's two national VPs. Joe's the first and primary, and then I'm second. And Joe, I was just elected in August, so this is my first term, and Joe's done several. So
yeah,
and he's doing a great job for us. We love Joe.
Yeah, if you watch this social media for the people listening here, Joe gets right fired up, and I love it. We need some emotion like that up in Canada. So I love watching his stuff. So it's great.
Yeah, Joe's a high energy guy in everything he does. He lives in Texas now and is with Houston PD, but he's a New Yorker at heart. So he's high energy.
But we'll start off kind of talking a bit about you, just get some more background. You can just tell us about yourself, where you grew up, and how you got into policing.
Absolutely. So my growing up story is a little unique. I had two great parents that were, really, really good to me. And my brother, I have a younger brother, and but we moved around a lot. They were free spirits. So growing up, I didn't really grow up in any one place. 8 different schools by the time I graduated high school in, I think, 6 or 7 different states. So different parts of the country too.
Wow.
For a while, I lived in the Southwest. I lived in New Mexico. And from 5th grade till about halfway through high school. And, that's as you get older and become a young adult, you start thinking about what you want to do with your life. And that's kind of where I started. In fact, I remember a pivotal point living in New Mexico. I was a pretty big baseball player, and there was a younger umpire in our league, who one day I saw him at my high school. And he was in a Santa Fe Police Department uniform. He was a police officer there. And just always didn't really know him that well, but looked up to him. He was a really sharp individual. And he came in his pressed uniform and looked real sharp and was helping out. I was like, that looks like a good fit for me. You also have to think about the time, right? This is essentially in the 80s when you had, not like today, unfortunately, there was a lot of TV shows and movies, and the police were always the good guys, and they were smart and they were cunning and were there to help. So I grew up watching that, which I'm sure we'll touch on later is I think an issue that you don't see that out of Hollywood and TV anymore. So I saw him. I was really impressed. And as I got older and kind of looked at what did I want to do, I went to college and I went to a business school and got a business degree. But the neighborhood I went to college in, a great school, but it was a tough neighborhood. and I'd be walking back and forth in class, and I'd see the police cruisers flying by, lights and sirens, and I could never get that out of my head. I was like, man, that looks like fun.
Yeah.
And what's funny is years later, I was actually a lieutenant in that same neighborhood. But so I went out in the corporate world. I did business for a while, and it just sitting at a cubicle all day, staring out a window at best, just it wasn't fulfilling to me. It was fine. It was good, but I couldn't imagine doing a lifetime of that. And so I started taking police department tests. Now, this is the late 90s where it was fairly challenging to get on.
Mm-hmm.
And the process is so long. It's still longer than it should be. And I think that's one of the challenges we have. But the process was so long to get on. And, I was expecting it to be more immediate because I had no family involved in law enforcement. So I had no one to really bounce ideas off of or get an idea of how the process worked. But and really no family friends in law enforcement. I really had no connection to it.
Okay.
But I just knew it was something I needed to do. And so it took about 2 years till I got an offer. And then I got multiple offers at once and had to decide. I had the NYPD offer me a position in their academy weeks after Philadelphia did. But Philadelphia is where I'd been for a few years. I was as grounded there as anywhere in the country. I had good friends, and I had some family in town. So I decided to stick with Philly. And, I figured worst case, I'll do a few years in Philadelphia and move on either to a federal position or a state police position or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I was always having so much fun when an opportunity came along. I was like, now's not the right time. 25 years later, I'm still here. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Usually people have at least one family member or somebody that they've talked to or bounced ideas off of. So that's kind of unique. Yeah, you like nobody at all. You just kind of saw police in these different roles. A good one you bring up like is about movies and TV shows. I think of like Family Matters. Like the dad, like one of the main characters, is a cop,
right,
and you don't see that anymore. Where people, like I don't think you'd ever see a cop in like a prominent role where he's intelligent. Now they're always in these movies, and it's like they're the drunk,
right,
6 times divorced,
right.
doing corrupt things, and that's all people want to see. It's like, yeah, that definitely hurts kind of the view in kids' eyes and people growing up, right? So that's
100%. And the reality, as we know, is that's just not the case.
yeah.
That's um, like I said, I had no law enforcement background or family members, but my dad was big on service, helping your fellow man out whenever you can. So while it was no formal law enforcement upbringing, it was about being service to your fellow human
Hmm.
and helping people out. So that resonated with me
Yeah.
immensely, immensely.
So, in your role right now as a captain, what do you oversee? Like, how many people do you have that you kind of take care of, and what's your specific role as in the Philadelphia Police?
So in Philadelphia, your captain's rank can oversee anywhere from 100 to 250 officers, supervisors. We're broken down into districts,
Hmm.
similar like New York is in precincts. We call them districts. Um, there are now 22 different districts in Philadelphia, ranging in population size. I think the smaller ones are, let's say, around 100,000, and some can be several 100,000 people. And then our center city, our business area, while the resident population is fairly low, we can have over 1 million people in that district or division during the
Wow.
day with the influx of business. So um, my role is a little unique. So I've been elected to the local FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police here, our union, uh, for over 6 years. And we're so busy. We service almost 14,000 members, active and retired in the FOP. So it's a full-time gig. So there's an
Okay.
agreement with the department that the majority of the executive board is on release and works at the FOP full-time. So I don't have a command right now. I've just been here doing the work of the union.
Okay. Yeah. So our association, they have the full-time president, vice president. Everyone else is part-time, like any directors, secretary, treasurer.
Right.
I was looking up some numbers here just to give some of the listeners maybe an idea of like how big Philadelphia is and then how dense it is population wise. So like our city, Edmonton, is 680,000 or 680 square kilometers. Philly is 350. So about half the size of Edmonton, land wise, area wise. For Americans, that'd be 135 miles squared. And
Correct.
Philly's population, though, is about 1.6 million.
Correct.
Is what it said when I was Googling this. Edmonton is just shy of 1 million people. So we're very spread out, not very dense. And like even when you see our city, there's the collection of tall buildings is all downtown. There's a couple little high rises, spread out. But you look at a picture of Philly and it's just like towers everywhere.
Correct.
So yeah, when you talk about like the districts, how it's broken down, even in Edmonton, we have 6 districts. So it's almost like when you look at a map, it's like a quarter of the city is essentially one district.
Wow.
And it's very spread out. So yeah, Philly would be like, you have very small districts, but everybody's kind of stacked on top of one another.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of our neighborhoods are, we call them row homes or connected. Some areas they call them townhomes, but we call them row homes, and they're just houses connected right next to the house next to them. And, on average, 3 stories, some are 4 stories, and some are single family, some are split up into apartments, but we're kind of right on top of each other in a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah,
for sure.
So one of the things I want to get into with you, and we had this prior conversation, was just about some of the numbers with the Philadelphia Police Department. Because I think some of the numbers are pretty staggering when you look at the number of members you have on paper, I guess, and then how many physical bodies you actually have there at work.
Yeah.
So can you get into just some of the numbers that we talked about before, like total number of officers, how many are still there, and then we could kind of get into the recruitment, retention stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're allotted approximately 6,500 active officers in our department, in our ranks. That's what we're supposed to have, about 6,500. We've been well short of that for years now. And it's getting worse. I'm hoping that pendulum is going to start to turn, and we'll get into that. But so we're allotted 6,500. We're probably conservatively at least 1,500 short. Then you take in consideration how many are out injured on duty status that we don't have, how many that are under investigation that are pulled from the street. So I don't think it's outrageous to say that we're almost 2,000 short, which is a really significant number.
Wow.
And with that, a lot comes, it's like a snowball effect. So now the officers that are on the street have to work more, they're forced more overtime, vacation's harder to come by, and they're doing more while they're at work. The radio call assignments for the average patrol officer, those numbers are up, and they're being asked to do more and more. And, and then special units, which was kind of in Philadelphia, the culture is you do your time in patrol and you do a good job, and then a special unit spot might open up. There's something that appeals to you, and you can put in transfer for that. And, that was kind of the carrot that was always dangled. You work hard in patrol for so many years, and then you can get a shot at a special unit. We just don't have the manpower now to afford big special units, and they're dwindling. And some of them are looking at, being merged with others. And so it's a staggering effect. When I got on in the late 90s, you'd go to roll call and you'd have 3, 4 ranks of officers with you. And now that would be like 8 per rank of in the lineup. Now the average one, you might have 1. If you have 8 on a shift, that's good, or 8 at a roll call. We usually use mostly patrol cars. So the majority of officers are in cars. Some will be partnered up, some will be solo, but we always had wagons, the big paddy wagons, the vans that worked every shift. When I started, we'd have at least 2 every shift, sometimes 3, and on great days we have 4. Now they're lucky to have 1 in the division, which is at least 2 districts combined. So, And that's a huge issue when we have violent prisoners, violent
Yeah.
mental health issues. We just don't have the manpower to run enough wagons, and they're a really vital tool. And then if you get a prisoner that needs to go to the hospital, your one wagon's tied up. So then we're running short. So yeah, it's a significant problem. When I started our police academy, I started with 145, of which over 100 graduated. We start classes now, academy classes, with 30, 35.
Wow, that is a massive difference.
Yeah, we had one within the last 2 years that started with 18,
Jeez.
which is unheard of considering we were over 100 for years.
Yeah. So our service up here, we're about just shy of 2,000 sworn officers. At any given time, we have about 200. From what I understand, last numbers I got was about 200 off, and that's everything from injuries to stress leave, mental health stuff. Like, there's a whole bunch of things in there, and it makes like 200 out of that is difficult enough. So it's 10%. You're talking about like a third of your service could be off or
Correct.
gone or have left. Um, and we have the same struggles to a lesser degree. We don't have any. So there's lots of overtime, but you're not directed to come in on OT. I'm wondering, is the overtime that you hear about in the US, are these like actual departments telling people like you will work, like you're going to get paid, but you have to come in?
So, and this is the importance of the union, right? This
Mhm.
is where we negotiate the contracts. And not all departments are the same, and other states don't have the luxury of a union that can argue legally for contract and labor. But here in Pennsylvania, we can. And canceling days off does happen where you do have to come in. We have it by contract. They can only do it so many times and under such circumstances. What we run into more is tours being extended. So it's more like, hey, you can't go home yet.
Oh, okay.
Like, I know you're scheduled to go home, but you have to stick around. I truly believe our command staff does the best they can with trying to anticipate when this is going to happen. But we're a major city with major events almost all the time.
Mhm.
And then if there's a significant incident going on, we're at the point where they just don't have the manpower not to do it sometimes. But there are rules that they have to abide by to try and be fair to our officers. But this is part of the reason our ranks are so low is our officers can go to another department, a smaller suburban department outside the city, usually make more money
Hmm.
and have a better schedule and don't have to worry about their tours being extended or their days off being canceled.
Crazy. One of the things I wanted to get into was talking about just the casualties on the job. So people injured or killed in the line of duty. I so I was looking at Joe's social media, and I'd seen that I saw two different things he had posted where it was like Philadelphia police had been shot, officers had been shot. So I was looking up some news on that, trying to read about it, and I didn't realize it's like almost a daily thing where the cops are being shot at or actually getting hit. And just in this last week or 2 weeks, it was just like one this day, two the next day, way more than is making like even headline news. Can you talk a bit about how many officers or how many officer involved shootings you might have like in the Philadelphia area, uh, maybe in a year, or do you have like any kind of stats around that?
So nationally, because Joe just put the stat out in January, nationally we had 32 officers shot.
Mm.
So that's one every 23 hours, which is clearly unacceptable. I mean, and it hasn't always been like that. In Philadelphia in 2023, we had 9 officers shot over the course of the year. One fatally. We lost Officer Mendez in October in a horrible situation, and so 9 is too many, obviously, as well. Um, what are number of actual shootouts or police shootings? I don't have that number. It's fairly high. It's not uncommon. We had 2 officers shot in December in the highway patrol unit that you mentioned earlier that I was in. Um, First, let me start the story by telling you they're both okay. They're doing great. And in fact,
Yeah, okay.
they are going to be here tomorrow for a meeting we're having to donate money they raised to our survivors fund.
Oh, good.
But both were shot in the head in a shootout. There was over 100 rounds exchanged. The one officer, it was his fifth on duty shooting in his career. He's got about 10 years on. And the other officer, this is a remarkable story. This was his second time being shot in the head in the last 2 years.
Jeez.
Which is not common, obviously. But when he was at the trauma bay in the hospital, the doctor came back and he goes, "This CAT scan doesn't make any sense. You have 2 wounds and you have 3 projectiles in your head." He's like, "Oh, that's from the last time I got shot." And the doctor was kind of like, "That doesn't make any sense. What are you doing?" But thankfully they're all right.
That guy can't make a case for getting a Kevlar helmet or something.
Something, right? Or getting transferred somewhere else off the street. But we've had 4 in the area, as we were talking earlier. In the last week, we had an officer shot just over a week and a half ago in the leg. He's okay. We had another officer shot during warrant service, during a narcotics warrant.
Mm-hmm.
It hit him right in the vest, which was good, and ricocheted off his vest into his hand. And then right outside of Philadelphia, in one of our neighboring departments, we had 2 officers that were responding to a 911 call and almost ambush style. And they're both home from the hospital as well. So that's a lot. I mean, we don't usually have 4 in a week, but we seem to be having more and more. We know for a fact there's a lot more guns on the street due to our district attorney's office over the last few years, and the prosecution of criminals, especially regarding guns, has been very lax. And the result is more crime, more criminals on the street, and a whole lot more guns on the street.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I think that's a good segue into talking about some of the politics around this. And as I was mentioning just before we fired up, one of the big changes we had up here in Canada was the premiers of the province. So equivalent would be your governors. They all, like across the provinces, all got together and went to the federal government, said like, "This is enough. Our communities are just terrible. There's people, committing crimes everywhere. Gun violence is through the roof. Violence in general, like even domestic violence, everything, it's gone way up. We need a change." And that was across all forms of government. So, right from, whatever party you're in, red or blue. Up here, it's kind of reverse of the Americans. So,
Right.
but right across, just kind of unified, had a big meeting and pitched the federal government, said, we need some change, real reform. Do you see any kind of change or anything on the horizon in the US? Is anybody in agreement anywhere of how to fix things?
I don't know that agreement is the word I would use,
Okay.
because our political system, red and blue, it's they're not getting the job done clearly on a lot of things. But specific to law enforcement, one of the things we do as a union, besides the labor, is we try and represent our members' interests politically. When I got on the job, we, as a city, we would average 400 to 500 homicides a year. And then in the early 2000s, we had great leadership in the police department. We had an excellent district attorney, which is who's responsible for prosecuting all the crimes. And we had a great mayor. And through a lot of hard work and sacrifice by our police officers and teamwork, we had the number at one year was down to 242 homicides, which is still a lot. But by our standard, we cut that number in half.
Yeah.
And the city downtown was a safe place to walk. You could business was great for small business in the center city, and tourism was good, and people would come and feel safe. And then kind of with the rest of the country in the last few years, the political leadership's been very weak. A rogue district attorney, who's what we have now, who refuses to prosecute. It seems on almost anything, unless they're prosecuting a police officer, then it's the rearrest when cases against police officers have been thrown out of courts. There's no history of them ever rearresting on these crimes unless it's a police officer.
Really?
So we have a high ranking officer who was arrested and fired, who is in his fourth year, I believe, and goes back again tomorrow for yet another try. And this district has lost at every level of court and continues finding ways to refile. And it's just, I mean, it's a morale killer, obviously. And then when you look at the amount of resources he's committing to this one case, I mean, clearly they could be spent better.
Exactly.
Being focused on real violent crime. And so our numbers now in the last few years, I mean, we're around 600 homicides a year, so we're double, almost triple where we were. And, what's changed locally, the biggest changes are the leadership. And but we've started to see that kind of change. So like our governor, who is blue, he's a Democrat. He was the attorney general, so he was the chief law enforcement officer for the state before he became governor. To his credit, has worked with us and kept us in the loop and had sit downs with us. Like, what can he do at his level to improve the career of a law enforcement officer, and how does he make the state safer? And when he was elected governor, people were worried. Now he had the support of the police. Is he going to put his money where his mouth was? And he has. And so it's nice to have a direct communication line with him. And then locally in Philadelphia, we have a new mayor that just was sworn in January. And she was in our city council before that. And, she ran essentially on law and order, which was kind of unique in this day and age for a Democrat blue to run on law and order. And she was kind of like, we got to get our city back under control. We have to make it safe for people to go to school and go to work. And so it's very early. We're still in the beginning. We're less than, 2 months in, but, her press conferences have brought a new energy that I haven't seen as far as a pro law enforcement energy to Philadelphia. So I'm optimistic. If she does half of what she's promised to do, I think we're going to be better off. She's brought in a new police commissioner who used to be in the command staff of Philadelphia. He's a high energy, intelligent guy, and I'm hoping between the two of them, one, we make the city a lot safer, but also we make it a better job for our police officers. I mean, the stress, it's such a different game now than it was even 20 years ago. Retention is a huge problem for us. So I'm hoping that they can turn the tide on a few things: crime, and then the conditions of the work conditions for our police.
Yeah. Do you find, and I don't know how much face time you've had with these politicians being fairly new to the spot you're in, but maybe locally even, do you find the politicians truly understand what's going on out there? And I'll give some context, because one thing I've done and tried to use this podcast to do is kind of cut out all the middle people,
right,
and just go straight to the source. Like, hey, if people are saying we need this rule change, this law change, whatever, why don't we get that person in, talk to them, but also get them on a ride along? And I know there's a lot of politicians who won't do ride alongs. I've found some pretty good success up here. I don't know what it'd be like down there, but do you find, like, are they kind of willing to come out and actually do a shift, see what the people see on the front lines? Because my experience up here has been, it is an eye opener, is a game changer. Like, you can tell someone this is scary all day. You can tell them it's dangerous, but when they actually see it, they feel it. Like, there's nothing like that. So has that ever happened down there? Any ride-alongs? Or are they doing anything else to kind of understand what members go through?
I agree with you, first of all, 100%. The ride-along's an eye-opener. Cutting out the middle people as much as possible is usually beneficial.
Yeah.
Let's get the real decision makers, the people, so that they're not getting a watered-down version or a rosier version of what the reality is. And to your point, so one of my good friends was a prosecutor here in the city, and pretty good. And one day he came out with my partner, and he did a ride along, and his I mean, he was very smart and pro law enforcement and knew what the job was, but he just didn't understand until he got out on the street. He's like, well, why aren't you doing this and doing that? I said, all right, counselor, what's our probable cause? Like, I know what you see, but what can we legally do here? What can we do the right way? And he said, we still talk about it this day. We're very good friends. And he talks about how his mind was absolutely blown once you get out there. Um, you know, our new mayor, she's born and raised in the streets here in Philadelphia. She comes from one of the more challenged neighborhoods, and I think she's got a pretty good handle on what's going on out there. Politician wise, I don't know how many have done a ride along, and I mean a real ride along, not
Yeah.
how nice everything is.
Yes, exactly.
let's get the brand new police car that's never been used or crashed and put them in that. So I don't know. I think there's value to it 100%, right? Because I see, even if you look at different national things, you'll hear a celebrity or athlete does something and there'll be kind of a stir. But then if it's on video and they see what's actually happened, then it's times 10. Oh, this is horrible. Well, that's the reality sometimes. There's horrible things happen, unfortunately. And that's what we signed up to combat and signed up to reduce. But I don't think there's enough real ride-alongs going on, but they're a tremendous tool. Our department has always been pro ride-along. It's pretty.
Okay.
They don't fight you very hard on getting people in the car and going around and seeing it, because Philadelphia is a great city. It's a city of neighborhoods, so you can be in one neighborhood that's very safe and nice, and 5 minutes later, you can be in a place that feels like a war zone. That can be very dangerous,
Wow.
and most people from outside those neighborhoods don't venture in. And I think it's important for some people to see it, to go in and see what the challenges are there.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point there where it's about like the decision making. I think when they get out there and they go, "Oh, like that person assaulted that person." It's like, well, but there's elements to the offense, right? And like maybe it didn't meet it. And how am I gauging the crowd around and my environment and everything
Right,
when making this decision, whether I'm going to go hands on or use some other tool to get this person into handcuffs?
right,
Then they start thinking, "Oh yeah, like that probably isn't a good idea." It's like, yeah, I have to make those decisions in half a second.
right,
Like we're standing here and we're your bodyguards. It's all safe for you. So
right.
it is nice to get them out there to see things. I feel like sometimes the politicians, I'll give them a little benefit of the doubt where I think sometimes they get swept up, just like a lot of the public, in the narratives and the headlines, and they just kind of go off on this tangent. So even bringing people back and showing them like, hey, you did a ride along with this unit 6 months, a year later, go on a ride along with this unit,
Correct.
and just as much exposure as possible. At least that's my opinion for elected officials. Your public safety, your public order is like a top priority. You should be engaged with those services as much as possible. So paramedics, fire, police, like you should be out there doing stuff with them. Like it's the hierarchy of needs. This is the base level. You
Right.
don't have this, you're not going to have anything after it, right? So,
Agree 100%. I think there's multiple benefits to it too. Yeah, they're getting out and see the realities of what's on the street and how crazy it can be, or how in desperate need some of these communities are of more help. But the other thing you're going to see is when you're doing that ride along with that police officer, just how good most of our police officers are. The
yes.
situations they keep calm in, the decision makings that they make, their decision making, what can they legally do as opposed to what can't they do? And that, 9 times out of 10, they make the right decision. And to your point, we have a few seconds to assess, make a decision, and implement that decision. And, when I talk about the prosecution of police officers, it's 4 years. Lawyers and attorneys and judges are still trying to decide if that 4-second incident was just or not.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
4 years by alleged great legal minds. It's taken them 4 years, and we get 4 seconds. And I don't think people get that, right? When we talk about politicians or the public in general, you know, it's just so crammed into such a quick decision usually. And then the other part is, we know as law enforcement officers, what's the whole story? If you just go up to a disturbance between a couple or something, I used to always say there's usually three sides to the story: your version, their version, and what really happened is somewhere in the middle there.
Yep.
Where the general public, I don't think, understands that nuance, where the general public's like, oh, no, he said this, and this is what happened. We have this 6-second video clip. This is obviously terrible. Meanwhile, we know that there's usually more to the story. Let's get context. Let me see the whole video clip. Let me see everything that happened. Let's get the whole story before we start making decisions on who's right and wrong. And I think the general public, especially now more than ever, when everything's instant gratification, everything's instant.
Yeah.
They make quick decisions, and they don't really put a whole lot of thought into, okay, is this accurate or not?
I think we've made people lazier. Like
100%.
They're not seeking out the information. It's clickbait. It's headlines. You're going to read the big thing, like police shoot somebody. It's going to be in the first 2 lines of whatever the article is. You don't know if anybody even reads the rest of the context to it. We've made people lazier in seeking out like real information and learning about this job. And you kind of mentioned community there. When you look at the news in the US, all you see is just communities on fire and people rioting and things going on. Do you find in your travels or the people you've talked to, is that the general consensus? Are people saying we don't want police in neighborhoods? Is there any neighborhood that actually says that? Or is that mostly special interest groups of politicians just saying that and they get the camera time?
So I think you're going to not be surprised at this answer. So you talk about the clickbait, you're 100% right. Our local newspaper, which was a major newspaper in the country for years, and it was pretty good. They kind of took the bait, I would say, ever since around when the Ferguson, Missouri incident happened. They became fairly anti-police and anti-negative, or anti-law enforcement. And every article, every title is, police officers shoot male.
Yeah.
They leave out the part that male just shot 3 people and then shot the police officers.
Yeah.
It'll just that kind of, and like you said, the public's gotten lazy with it. But I love this story. That paper hasn't done very well. And they used to have this big prominent building in Center City that was their headquarters. Well, I love this irony because they have since had to sell that building. It is now the location of our police headquarters. So we now occupy the building that they operated out of so recklessly for so many years, and it's now our building. So I love that little irony, that little jab we can give to them that we're still around and they're not. But so the clickbait thing's an issue. So the community. So I'll say this: when the Baltimore riots after Freddie Gray's death happened, which was several years ago, I was a sergeant in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, like a really tough neighborhood. There was no rioting in Philadelphia for that, but Baltimore was burning down. And I remember going to get a cup of coffee and somebody holding the door for me. He's like, "You all right, Sarge?" I said, "I'm good." He goes, "This ain't Baltimore. Like, we got your back. This is one of the toughest neighborhoods I'd put anywhere in the country, honestly. And it's not Baltimore. We got your back." Like, listen, there are nefarious people. There are bad people in some of these neighborhoods. Most of the community's absolutely fine. Just people with different life circumstances that don't have the advantages some of us grew up in. But, the people that aren't doing what they're supposed to, the criminals in the crowd, of course, they're going to be anti us and they're going to combat us and try and use everything they can. But most of the people in these communities, they're not with them. They want to be safe. They want the same things we all want, to live in a safe, clean environment and to be able to walk down the street without worrying about being robbed or shot. So, in those honest interactions, when it's just you and there's no cameras and you have these interactions with most of the people, I found them supportive. And then after the riots in a few years ago, I mean, Philadelphia riots were bad. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It got really, really ugly. And our officers went through a lot. I mean, it was career changing for some of them. It was really, really bad in certain neighborhoods. But in the days following, when we still had to have a huge presence in those neighborhoods, and then we were out as the union supporting our officers on the street, making sure they're fed and have something to drink, and, doing the best we can for them. I was back out in West Philadelphia where I'd been a police officer, I'd been a patrolman, and I'd been a detective out there. Again, another really, really tough neighborhood. But I'd be out on the corner and just talking to the officers, checking on them, and then people in the neighborhood like, we're so sorry about what happened. And it wasn't them, right? It was that 10% of nefarious individuals that are causing all the problems. We're sorry. How did this happen? What can we do? Are you okay? So, yeah, take the cameras and the politicians and all that out of the way. If the people that live in these neighborhoods could have more honest conversations and with the people that patrol these neighborhoods, and that the politicians would just listen to that exchange, we'd be a lot better off. And the we want less police, we're over policed. My experience is normally it's people that live out in the suburbs that don't need a whole lot of policing, that because they live in very safe communities are the ones telling these people that are stuck in these tough neighborhoods what kind of policing they need, which I find hilarious. And maybe
they're speaking for people they have no business speaking for.
Right. The most arrogant, racist thing you could possibly do is sit in your $1 million home and tell people that are trying to make rent what kind of policing they need. So, yeah, that's so. But social media and most media as a whole doesn't really help because it's just another version of clickbait. So you'll be like, man, the United States burning down, or this city's falling apart. And I would always tell people, look out your own window. What are your own eyes tell you? What's your actual experience, not what you saw on your computer or your phone.
Yeah.
And it's a lot better than what we think it is if we just but I think that goes into the mental health of police officers, why it's so hard. Because, we're all on our phones. We're all on social media, whether we want to be or not. And so it's a 24/7 negativity in a lot of times for law enforcement. And the younger officers who've been brought up in social media being your form of communication, I think it's really taxing on them mentally.
Yeah, it's certainly a different experience across generations. Do you think? So, what's Philadelphia looking to do when it comes to recruitment? Because I see what in Canada, every single service is basically going across the country trying to recruit people from other cities. Like it's a battle to get recruits, and you're fighting every other service, even the federal services. So, what is Philadelphia? They got any kind of strategies for recruiting people?
They have strategies. You're exactly right. I think the younger generations who we pull from now, it's been such a difference from older generations, how you grew up, what was out there for you. I think that, when I was younger, there was no social media. So if you wanted to be a part of something, you were on a sports team or you were on a club, or there was always something, you had to do something physically and meet with people face to face to be part of a team and get that camaraderie. Right. And, I think the younger generation hasn't had to do that. They've had camaraderie through their phones with other people. And so if you look at service industry across the board in the United States, law enforcement's down, nursing is down, professional lifeguards, all these service industry, the military, it's all down significantly. So it's not just us. Philadelphia is trying different strategies, but my personal argument, and this is the belief of the national FOP, that recruitment is very important, but retention is even more important, because if there's a hole in the bottom of your cup, no matter how much you pour on the top, if people are leaving out the back, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're never going to get up to where you need to be. So retention, how do we change that? Well, number one, we treat our officers better. We look out for them more. And, pay is important. I mean, money is a reality for everybody. So paying more is great, but how are we treating the officers in the day to day? What's the discipline structure like? For years, when there was people lined up at the door to become Philadelphia police officers, if there was a job that went sideways or there was some question to it, the commissioner at the time was on record saying, listen, to be in the interest of keeping the community happy and everyone, I'm just going to fire this officer, and then the union can fight for the officer in court to get their job back. And then they'll probably get their job back, but at least I can say
Okay.
I took action against this officer. Well, if you're firing people that shouldn't be fired, you're showing that you don't have their back.
Yeah.
And it's not just to that officer, it's to everybody that they've worked with, and everyone else sees it. And it's like, well, we all make sacrifices doing this job. Our families make sacrifices when we do this job. And it's hard to want to make those sacrifices when you feel like, oh, we're going to let you go because this might be a problem.
Hmm.
So that leads to our retention. So we have to treat our officers better. I think our command staff is starting to understand that. Not all commanders, but some are starting to get like, we got to treat them better to keep them. There's bonuses out there, but this is my argument for anything. I mean, let's treat the other departments as our competition. If all you're doing to try and beat your competition is copying what they do and doing the same thing, that's not a winning strategy, right? So there are bonuses now being offered, but I can point an hour and a half down the road where they're offering double the bonus we are for signing. So I don't know how strong a strategy the bonus structure is, or
Hmm.
make it a great place to work and people will come. We're a giant city with huge events that has every possible special unit you can imagine. You can get into anything, whether you want to fly helicopters,
Yeah.
command a boat, you can, SWAT, canine, narcotics, you name it, we have it here. And we get great events. In 2026, we're hosting the World Cup for a month. So we're going to have the World Cup. We're going to have Major League Baseball All-Star. We have everything that comes with our sports teams. We have every concert you can imagine. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that happens here. So create a good work environment. This is the place to be. I mean, I've been here 25 years
Yeah.
and I was never planning on being here more than 5. So get them in the door and treat them right. And, I think the rest follows, but that's clearly easier said than done.
Yeah. Well, so maybe kind of on the FOP side, and doing some of the lobbying and fighting for members, where do you think, where's most of your fight occur? Where does most of the talking and the lobbying occur? Is it like in your position now, I guess, because you're national, is that going to be in Washington, or are you mostly in the state? Where do you kind of operate and what are you working on?
A lot in Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly in Washington. There's a couple bills that we're trying to get passed at the national level. One is the Protect and Serve Act, where if you willingly assault a police officer, someone that to be a law enforcement officer, that the federal government can now step in on the prosecution, and you're now subject to federal government prosecution.
Okay.
And you would think that's kind of a no-brainer, but it's harder than you think to get it passed. Joe works very hard on that. In the United States, we have Social Security, and it's a fund. Essentially, if you pay into it your whole life, then Social Security will receive checks when you retire, depending on the amount of money you contributed. Well, 40 years ago, public service employees with a public service pension are now penalized. So even though you contribute the same amount of money to Social Security, you're not entitled to the same amount of benefit when you retire because you have a public pension, being whether it's law enforcement or a teacher or any public,
Oh, okay.
which just isn't fair. So
Yeah.
we're giving you our money and we're not getting any money in return. So we've been battling for that for years. We're closer than we've ever been, but it's, I can't tell you definitively that we're going to achieve it anytime soon. So that's some of the national stuff we do. And then also just on education, we do a lot of education for our smaller unions on labor and how do we argue, how do we make the life of a police officer easier and get them better benefits. And so, but national, we're in DC a lot. We have our national headquarters is in Nashville, Tennessee, but we have an office in Washington because we're there so much.
One, maybe on that national kind of aspect, I seen like a few tweets, maybe some stuff on LinkedIn, just talking about some people, I guess, were mentioning like having like a national standard for policing or like a national police service kind of idea, maybe like the RCMP in Canada.
Right.
I could never see that taking hold in the US, but do you think when we talk like training and standards, having things standardized to a certain degree, is there any kind of consensus on like maybe statewide? So per state, everyone should just go to one academy, so we know you're all trained to the same use of force standards and the firearm standards and driving? Or is that like, that's just like never going to happen? Everyone just likes to do their own thing.
That's a really good question, and I think you're right. At a national level, it's just the way the United States Constitution that the government is set up is that it is the United States, even though it doesn't always seem like it. So,
Yeah.
state rights and state individualism is very important, and I agree with it because Pennsylvania is different than Wyoming. It just is.
Yep.
In Pennsylvania, we have we have a state board that is municipal law enforcement officers, police officers board, which is composed of officers from around the state, and they set the standards of what your training has to be every year. So every law enforcement officer in Pennsylvania has to do training every year to maintain their status to be a state a police officer within the state. So there is standardized requirements, training that are done. Same thing with the police academies. They're all essentially have to meet the same standards, pass the same tests. Now, that doesn't mean some academies aren't harder than others. They definitely are. So in Pennsylvania, we do have like a state standard system. One of the things we actually rallied behind with criminal justice reform was in Pennsylvania, nobody wants bad cops on the street. Cops don't want bad cops on the street because you don't want to have to work with that person. They're going to put you at risk. You can get hurt with them, or whether it's physical risk or financial risk or career risk, nobody wants to work with bad cops. So we help. You'd see some officers that aren't fit for the job would bounce from department to department. They'd get in trouble in one department, get onto another one, and what do you know? The same things are happening with the other. So there's a state ruling now that there's a list so that to help prevent that, so we don't have bad officers jumping department to department.
Okay. Yeah.
And we, along with the state government, were behind that. We thought that was a sensible reform. And by supporting the things that make sense, when we say, hey, this reform you're talking about doesn't make any sense, this is no good, this doesn't help anyone, they'll listen to us more. So that's important. So, but I think it's important that individual regions, at least, if not police departments, have their own academy if they're able to, because policing in Philadelphia is different than policing in the middle of the state. Geographically, it's different. Population's different. And when I was in the academy, they push community norms. So we have some neighborhoods where there just isn't enough parking, right? For one example. So they tell you in that neighborhood, don't worry if cars are illegal. It's been like that for 100 years. There's only so many spaces for so many cars. There's a community norm there of that neighborhood makes it work with how they do parking. Let's ease on the parking enforcement on that.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger your regions are where you're setting up academies, you're going to lose that individual community influence and knowledge where you learn, okay, our community is a little different, so we're going to police it a little differently as opposed to somewhere on the other side of the state.
Yeah, I find like the debates about all this national stuff and even state to state, or for us province to province, very interesting because I had a previous guest on here, Kevin Sear, and he's one of the commanders with a SWAT team in British Columbia. And he wrote a really good paper on the militarization of police. But part of that was it was comparing U.S. and Canada. And the U.S. has something like 18,000 police services or law enforcement agencies. I can't remember the exact definition of it, but Canada has about 180.
Wow.
And that's because the RCMP is in municipalities right across Canada. There's a huge push right now. There's a lot of debate back and forth, and this is a very politicized issue now. Should that national police service, the federal police, be doing frontline policing? So everyone kind of equates them to the FBI. They're not the FBI. They do functions that they do, but they also do functions of like the ATF and the DEA. Like they're kind of a lot of things all in one. People are now asking, should we be doing that? The province I'm in, Alberta, is kind of like the Texas of Canada.
Okay.
What a lot of people describe it as.
Yeah.
So they're very, no, we like doing our own thing, and we want to have our own provincial police. That's come up lately. So like an equivalent of a state police. Uh, there's been more municipal services popping up with their own police. Some of our reserves, so our Indigenous First Nations people, they are creating their own police services in certain areas because it's more community based. We see this debate, it's right across the country, and now you're starting to see it kind of pop up. At least I've noticed it more on social media in the US. So I think it's probably going to be a big debate for you guys down there for a while. But yeah, and even national standards, they talk about things as far as use of force. Like an assault over here is an assault over there. So can we have the same use of force kind of standards or the training? So there's even debates about like a national college to truly professionalize policing. And well, was part of that debate was like, hey, if you're going to do that, like, then you're going to start paying police as much as doctors,
Right.
because they're going to be real professionals. Like, so it's like, well, then who are we letting in, right?
Right.
So,
What do you? What's your take on that as far as nationalizing, or what's the average Canadian police officer feel about that? Are they, or is there a general consensus, or does it depend on who you ask?
it's different province to province,
Yeah.
municipality to one city to the next. There's benefits and negatives to both, really, at the end of the day. And lately, we've seen so the RCMP, their biggest detachment was in this city called Surrey, and Surrey recently switched to their own municipal police, and it is like the biggest headache in the news. It's the mayor. The mayor has their own plans, but they're fighting against the province, who has their own plans. Um, I don't know where it's going to end up. It looks like Surrey police are going to
Right.
stay. They're there now. Um, but I couldn't imagine that for like every city that wants to switch, and then the provincial police, and it's just constant back and forth. It's so politicized. Meanwhile, all the people on the front lines doing the job are like, I just want to go and do my work. Like, I don't care.
Right.
So,
Right.
but if I was putting money on it, I think eventually the RCMP is going to go toward the federal side, putting more money into that, pulling out of some of the communities. It's just that some of the communities are very remote, especially in our northern region. Like,
Right.
you have 100,000 people in like this giant, just open area. They also, one of the issues that came up was some of the areas don't have the population to draw off of. So when you look at the populations in certain sections of provinces or the territories, there's a lot of fetal alcohol syndrome.
Right.
There's a lot of like issues within families. Like, the people might not be able to even be police officers, but even if they did, you don't necessarily want to send the person back to their community to police, because
Right.
it's just arresting your uncles and your family, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. So there's a lot of different considerations, I guess, for us. I don't know if it'd be the same in the US with that necessarily, but
It's it's a legitimate point. Like, just within Philadelphia, you're not allowed to work in the district you live in.
okay.
Right. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of that on a much smaller, just to avoid that. Like, it's one thing to be part of the community, but if it's your neighbor that maybe you have an issue with, maybe you shouldn't be policing that, or don't, you know what I mean? In case of favoritism or,
Yeah, the conflicts of interest.
right. What's the population you're drawing from? Are they a large enough population to provide enough qualified candidates to be in law enforcement?
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see a push, like a significant push for. I know there are some people that don't really understand law enforcement in the United States that have mentioned that. I don't think it's a good idea here, because again, going back to how important just knowing what your community is, and knowing, we try in Philadelphia, we try and draw our police department, our ranks, from the community that we serve. So until 2010, you had to live in the city and be from the city, essentially,
Okay.
to get in the police, to maintain that, so that it's a reflection of the community you're serving.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's important, and that's I know sometimes now we have people from all over, and a lot of them do a great job, but sometimes they'll come for a couple of years and be like, this isn't really the right fit for me, and I'm going to go to another part.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too comes down to the dollars spent on the dollars spent on the priorities. So when you look at our federal police, they're responsible for like international stuff, transnational organized crime,
Right.
cartel level things. But when they're spending only, 2 cents of every dollar, just as an example, on that stuff, and 60 cents of every dollar is in community policing. It's like you're the only organization, at least in Canada, that has the money, the budget, and the resources to fight, this large level organized crime.
Right.
So we need you doing that, not necessarily community policing. That's what some of the debate has come down to. Where, what are the priorities for each service, for each community? Where's the money, and who's doing those functions? So, yeah, I think at least in Canada, there's going to be a lot of change coming in maybe the next 10, 20 years. So,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. How much resources can they contribute to the significant threats, and where a lot of our crime stems from is what comes in through our borders, and then the
yes.
threats that come in through there, and we have a nice partnership with the FBI and the ATF and the DEA, where we're a large enough department in the city that we have task force created that have been around for years. So we have officers from our department detailed to those agencies so that they get the intel and the experience of our street officers while maintaining the power of the federal government, where they have the ability to go do long-term investigations, go all over the world, wherever the job takes them to. So, and I think that's a model that seems to work. And what's good for us is, when we have a prosecutor here that's not really interested in prosecuting criminals, if it raises to the level of a federal crime or falls within that, then we can take that avenue. And that's been a powerful tool for us for several years.
Yeah, definitely a lot of power to having good partnerships. That's critical. So,
right.
We're just coming up to the end of our time here. I just want to make sure we get a chance to say just any kind of upcoming projects with you in particular. Any stuff coming down the pipeline that people should know about?
Oh, there's always stuff. There's always stuff going on. So right now, in a few weeks, well, a couple things. In 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks, the National FOP, we hold 2 significant conferences at our national headquarters. One is our Officer Wellness Summit. And we're really trying to focus on, when we talk about wellness, physical is important, right? Trying to maintain your body, keep in as good a shape as possible, improve your diet, which is a real struggle now for everyone. But we also talk about mental health. Like, how do we keep our officers healthy? One of the things I ran on nationally that's very near and dear to me is mental health with our police officers. In the last 2 years, we've had 9 Philadelphia police officers kill themselves.
Wow.
And we have a lot of great programs that, in conjunction with local universities, with our healthcare benefits, the department has been great about trying to provide help to police officers. But clearly 9 is unacceptable. It's not even close to enough. So what can we do? What haven't we thought of? Like, what do we do to keep our officers mentally healthy? And I touched on it earlier with the phones and social media. It's 24/7 for our cops, and it's really hard on them. So I've worked with some close friends, some guys that you would thought were on top of the world, and that we had some very honest conversations where they told me how at one point they didn't see any other way out but to take their own life, which was heartbreaking because these are some of my very best friends, and I had no idea. And we all know we've all lost somebody to suicide where you had no idea. And then you think, what could I have done? What should I have done? How did I not see it? So we've been working on a program where we're going to utilize technology and create a system where they can just scan a QR code, and then it's going to give them about a half dozen exercises that they can do at home. And it's going to talk about what the exercise does, why it's beneficial, not just physical and mental health exercises, stuff such as meditation, controlled breathing, journaling, stuff that In my day and age, no one ever talked about, obviously, that you would never think to do, but stuff that really works. And the big benefit to this program, that as I see it, is I think our number one obstacle to getting our officers the mental health help they need is all the programs we have in Philadelphia all start the same way, though. The officer has to admit and ask for help.
Okay.
And as law enforcement, we are the help. All right. That's how we identify. We're the help. We don't ask for help. We are the help.
Yeah.
So this is something so that officers can access this treatment, treat themselves. It maybe get to the point where they can ask someone else for help, but at least get the treatment without having to start by saying, I need help. They can just say, you know what, I'm having a tough day. Let me see that thing that the National FOP has out there. Let me just take a look at that, see if that helps. So we're launching that at the Wellness Summit. Really excited about that. And then we hold a Leadership Matters summit the days after that, just trying to promote leadership within the union, within our police departments. You know, how do we take better care of our officers? How do we empower them to have successful careers and extend their longevity to the career, hopefully. So we have that coming up. And then a week after that, we'll be in Washington, rallying with the International Association of Firefighters to get these benefits that I was telling you about earlier, to get our fair share of the benefits. Also, the Protect and Serve Act, we're going to be pushing for that. It's an election year, so the window is closing until the election gets completely out of control and takes over Washington. So we're trying to get that all done before that starts. And then here in Philadelphia, we're looking at new partnership with the new mayor and the commissioner, and improving the life of police officers here in Philadelphia, making it safer, getting the city back on track, and getting prepared for the upcoming years with all the international events that are coming. I talked about how low we are. We already know we're having over 400 officers retire by the end of the year, on top of how short we are.
Jeez.
And we're bringing in, if we get 300 new ones a year, so we're going to be at a bigger deficit next year, and we know that. But trying to come up with strategies to combat that and get more and more people in and hold on to them.
Well, if you need a few officers down there, I'm sure I could find a few of the boys will come down and help out.
Yeah. Come on down. Philly's a great place to live. We got the beach an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
We got some mountains not too, we call them mountains. I don't know that they're really mountains, but we got some hills not too far away. And come on down. I'll vouch for you. We'll take you.
So just at the end here, I want to make sure you get a chance to say how people can follow you. Where can they find you? So social media, websites, anything in particular?
I don't have the presence Joe does. I just kind of ride his coattails a little bit. But no, my information's all on the National FOP board. Email, phone calls. I'll take a call from anybody, an email. Love to help, love to talk, and I'm sure I can learn stuff from up north 100%. So it just, whenever we combine, get our heads together and start coming up with things, it's always positive.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm just gonna remind listeners, just share, like, comment, help spread the message, get this out there. Because we're just trying to help people and come up with some good ideas and be creative and kind of collaborate and use these partnerships as much as possible. Because even in Canada, we see a lot of the same issues as in the US. Some of them start up here and go down there, or vice versa. But make sure we kind of help out and spread the message. So thanks for coming on today, John.
Thanks for having me. Real pleasure. I appreciate the time, and looking forward to working with you more in the future. Go Flyers.